Welcome to Season 8 of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us. We're in Season 8 and we still have a lot to talk about. Radio Free 501c is supported by USAE News, the weekly community newspaper of Association CVBs and hotels. Learn more at usaenews.com. This week we're welcoming back two of my favorite guests, Daniel Elacqua, Chief Executive Officer at Strategico Consultants, and his partner on projects, Gwen Garrison. She's a data strategist at High Sierra Insights, and we're scratching my nerd itch. We're talking about data management and governance. It's Monday, April 13th, 2026. Welcome to episode 324. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the middle of April. Can you believe it? I know 2026 is flying by, but I'm glad you're taking a few minutes for yourself and listening to this great episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by my company, Rogue Tulips Consulting, and USAE News, who is our podcast partner this year. You can learn more about USAE News at their website, conveniently named usaenews.com. And we want to thank them for providing complimentary subscriptions to all our podcast guests this year. So thank you, USAE. Hi, I'm Cecilia Sepp. I'm your host for Radio Free 501c. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips, and I'm so glad you're here this week because two of my favorite guests are back. They've been here before, and they are experts in data, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Data management and governance. I have a sneak preview because they told me some of the points they're going to hit. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and you're going to love it. But before we dive in, I want to ask my guests, Daniel and Gwen, to introduce themselves and say hello to the audience. Let's start with Gwen. Gwen, welcome back.
Thanks, Cecilia, and good to be here. My name is Gwen Garrison, and I am the principal data strategist at High Sierra Insights. And I work alongside Strategico consultants to bring the best we know about data to help associations. I also am the Associate Dean and full clinical professor at Claremont Graduate University, which allows me to be on the cutting edge of many of these conversations.
Wow, that, it's not like, you sound like you have a very full schedule, Gwen. So I'm glad you could fit us in. Thanks for coming back. And then Daniel, would you like to say hello as well and tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Daniel Elacqua. I am the CEO and founder of Strategico Consultants. And we're a technology advisory firm focused on helping mission-driven organizations align business process with the right technology. So I have focused my career very heavily on helping associations and nonprofits align both business and technology, because I believe that technology should support the operations and the goals of the business.
Well said. I am a huge supporter of a strong technology infrastructure. And one of the things I've seen in the nonprofit clients of all kinds that I work with, whether they're associations or C3s or whatever type of 501c, is they tend to let their technology grow uncurated. And so next thing you know, we're using 27 different pieces of technology when, maybe 6 would do. But that's just the natural growth of things. We add things on. So it's great to know that you're out there, Daniel, and you can help people sort those things out. As a gardener, and as we are now in springtime, I'm often thinking of trimming things, like when you trim your garden and take out the weeds and just keep the stuff that you really want to keep or what you really need. And that brings us back to one of my favorite nerdy topics, which is data. I'm totally a data nerd, always have been since I was a little kid. So since our last conversation, and we're going to open with Daniel on this one, what have you learned about data management and governance over this period of time? Let's say over the last year and a half.
Oh, there is so much to talk about here. So I'm actually going to start by talking about a recent project that we did. And what made this project unusual was the client asked us not to just come in and do our usual data assessment and make our recommendations. They asked us to actually go out and identify 8 to 12 organizations that were similar in nature. They were a membership-based organization and interview those organizations on what they were doing around data management and governance. So ultimately, we ended up talking to 8 different organizations, mostly associations, one nonprofit and one for-profit, about their data management and governance. And what we saw was everybody's dealing with very similar issues. Once they get their strategy in place, they're having issues executing on that strategy. They're having issues making sure that their data is connected and all of their systems are talking to each other. And they've all identified that there are data fragments across the organization. And we often see this in the realm of somebody using a spreadsheet to track event data or committee data because they're not familiar enough with the system. They haven't been trained on the system and they might not know how to use the system. So they've extracted it at some point and gone off and created their own data source, creating this data fragmentation. Mm-hmm. We've also seen commonality of, data really starts with the strategy from the top. And it needs to, we need to get executives talking throughout their entire organization and making sure that they are not just emphasizing that data is a priority, but they're making data a priority themselves and that they're looking at data to make better business decisions.
Yeah, before we throw it over to Gwen, I want to do a follow-up on data fragments. That's a perfect description of what people tend to do with data and organizations. So Daniel, could you give us a little more background on what you mean by a data fragment?
Yeah, so data fragment is really disconnected data that might be kept up to date, but it's not integrated in with all the rest of your data. So you can't make the best use of it, right? So a good example is we have a client who, when we first started engaging with them, and we went through our whole IT assessment, it became very clear that they were not keeping their committee members up to date in their AMS. They actually had those in a separate spreadsheet because they didn't know how the committee module of the AMS worked. Well, the repercussions of that is they now can't get a full picture of membership engagement for those people that are engaged on committees, on boards, that are attending events, that are integrated into their online community. So it really plays into, if you have this fragmented data, you can't get a good full picture of your membership and how they're engaging with your organization.
Oh my gosh, all the stuff sitting on hard drives that's not in the system. It's like, please don't do that. So Gwen, before we move on to another question about this, just I'm like already involved in the story of data management. Did you want to add anything to what Daniel said about what you've learned recently?
So, yes, and I will compliment with what Daniel said is one of the things we're learning, and we talk about this as data maturity in an organization, is after there's kind of this executive buy-in and there is really alignment on the mission and that's flowing from the executive suite down and the priorities are going that in that direction, it really what we're seeing is how energized many teams become because now they see how they're connected to other teams and why it matters to them everywhere. So there is this, instead of being in isolation in their units with often their applications or technologies, they now see this larger integration piece that they're doing. And they get actually pretty excited. And that's where, as Daniel says, their execution energy often outpaces their execution planning. And they really now need solid execution planning and they understand how these pieces are going to fit together.
And this, and I love that you said it energizes people because once they understand how things work together and fit together, that's really what motivates us to really get invested in the work we're doing instead of, oh, we're just clocking in at 9, clocking out at 5, or whatever your schedule may be. And I think when people realize, wow, it's actually making your work go much more smoothly and you have more time to do the deeper work, I think that is a motivation. So, Gwen, I want to do a follow up. Now, one of the things we wanted to talk about was the difference between operational data and strategic data. And this seems like a good data point in the conversation to bring that up. So it sounds like maybe that motivation is driving strategic use of it. But what do you think is the difference between operational and strategic data?
So I'm going to say that there are two fundamental differences here. The first is the operational data is data that's flowing among the applications themselves, and that really does take technologist, someone with Daniel's skill level, to understand how to make that work and how to work it efficiently so that the real-time insights are showing up in the various applications that need it to be happening. And then the strategic side of it is often a slightly different configuration where you're understanding the historical pieces that have been aligned in the record as well as the current events. So often operations are about the current event, and strategic is the long history of that person in our association who has, and I'll just take a point kind of around committee members. So this person came into the organization as kind of a junior professional. They connected into the educational models. They then became engaged, and more members served on committees. Now they're actually moving on to more senior leadership positions, and then maybe actually board level leadership positions. Having a full picture of that person and their strategy is you're offering them different kinds of education points that would serve them well at different times in their careers. And that becomes seeing that full picture, and seeing more of that full picture then energizes association folks to what is the content? How do we engage this person? Because oftentimes people hang around in associations and we do a lot to energize them at the very beginning, but then they fall away because there's not much that's actually the association is giving them. So we're seeing now a whole kind of journey mapping of the association member and where they need to develop materials, products, connections for the whole life cycle of that member.
I'm actually going to add on to that. So I agree with everything that Gwen said. And to put this into context that we can understand. So operational data, according to Gwen's definition, would be like if I'm working an event, right? And we need to know the number of people that have attended, the number of people that have canceled. The strategic is looking at that event over time. We've had the same annual conference for the last 10 years. Is our attendance going up? Is it going down? Is it based on location? What are the factors that are playing into that, right? So the questions become slightly different. It's not how many people do I need to feed at this dinner that's happening at the event. That's very operational. It's should we continue to have this event, or do we need to modify its format to be more successful? And the number of clients that have come to us and said, look, we just don't know. We've got all these projects and services, and we've had them forever, and we never retire anything. And we don't know what we should continue to do. Well, that's a strategic conversation, right? We need to take a look at that longitudinal data to see that program that you started 10 years ago, is it still successful or not? And if it's not, why not? Is there a way to rescue it and make it successful again? Does it need to morph into something else, or do we need to kill it entirely?
Right. Yeah, and I've got two words for the audience on that point: purposeful abandonment. And that is thoughtful review using this kind of data Gwen and Daniel talk about to make those kind of decisions. We also have to figure out how we can untangle the emotional attachments to these programs, which the data can help us do. Many times we do hang on to things even when they stop working. It's, oh well, because we've just always done it, or well, we started this program 25 years ago. Well, it was probably great 25 years ago, but maybe today it needs a revamp, or maybe we need to just retire it and honor it and say goodbye to it. And so that's a great description of the use of operational data versus strategic data. You could also look at the operational data as the tactical data, or the task-oriented data, if you want to frame it that way. So that's really great. So another thing that got me excited about this conversation, and we'll start with Daniel on this one. You talked about operational hubs versus strategic hubs, and why does that matter? Does it matter?
It does matter, and I think that this goes into the operational data versus the strategic data. When you are thinking about that strategic longitudinal data, do you need to see the same data points that you need to see on the operational side? Most likely not. Maybe there's some commonalities, but you're really looking again across time. So, often when we go to a client, we start talking to them about data or a data warehouse, they start talking about the dashboard, right? They want this magical dashboard that answers everything for them. And what we're saying is there's really several dashboards that you need. And you need to think about them in two different categories. You need to think about one as an operational hub and two as a strategic hub. And they could be based on different in different systems, right? So your strategic hub is much more of your data warehouse that's connected to a business intelligence tool that can give you that longitudinal data, where your operational data might live in your AMS, and you might be able to get the dashboards with the tools that the AMS already has, rather than trying to make that data warehouse your strategic hub. I'd also
I'm sorry, Gwen. I just want to interject a question before we hear your comments. So are we saying, and this is just really for consistency of language and understanding communication, are we saying data warehouse now, data lake, data well? I thought warehouse was kind of 10 years ago, and now we're looking at data wells. I mean, what is like the most common phrasing for data caches now? Anyone?
You want me to take that or Daniel?
Sure, Gwen, why not?
You're right. We kind of went away from the data warehouse, and the basic differences, and I'm going to defer to Daniel's understanding on this because he's the technologist, is that in data warehousing, the data itself is very structured. And when it is structured, it allows us to pull it into business intelligence applications much easier in the process. When you get to a lake and a well, the data remain a bit unstructured, but they're there poised to be used. But it does take very intentional effort to think, gee, what is the question we're trying to answer, and what is the best display to answer it, to transform the data in order for it to work in the business intelligence application. So this is and you know what I should say, what folks are facing now is that applications can actually store data fairly cheaply in the data itself, but people lose track of what's in the well or what's in the lake if there's nobody going there to say, is there any reason why we're keeping this? And so then bloat runs amok for them. And they lose the value of the data that they're trying to really make sense of. And this is what really having a good strategist working with the executive team to say and pose questions, and then really ask yourself, do we need to be keeping these items past their useful date in an age where privacy and security are certainly paramount for all of us and our data?
Yes. Oh, that's a wonderful explanation. Thank you. because I think a lot of us use those words interchangeably for this is where all our data is. But based on what you just said, Gwen, no, obviously that's not. So we need to think of it differently. And then, Gwen, did you want to? Well, wait. Okay, before we do that, Daniel, did you want to add on about language?
I did not. I think that Gwen did a
Okay.
really excellent job of communicating there. The data warehouse is more structured. So a data warehouse is actually optimized for your BI, for your dashboards, for your reporting. Where a data lake, because of the raw data and the flexible environment, it's optimized a little bit more for data science and data research.
Oh, great. Well, thank you both for that because those are things I work a lot with data with my clients as well because I do a lot of research. So I try to understand all these things and I always kind of laugh when I say things to my husband about data wells and he's like, "What's that?" Just like, okay, he's a policy guy. So, but Gwen, did you want to add some comments and insights on what Daniel was talking about with operational hubs and strategic hubs?
Only that to really emphasize what Daniel says is that the strategic hubs should really be focused on answering the questions the executive and the organization want to answer. So, in the past, kind of connecting both of these, people like myself created data warehouses or were on data warehouses because we thought we needed to keep everything. At point, everything would become important to know about. And then part of the going away from warehouses was that amount of effort. In the past, I had 15 different major systems and about 10,000 variables that I was managing on all the quality indicators. And it was a Herculean, difficult task to do. And so we kind of went away from that. And now we've returned to the warehouse, but a warehouse with a very strategic purpose, answering our long term questions over time, what we need to know. And then at this additional point, we also can answer the larger privacy questions. What do we do with GDPR records? Do we maintain them? How do we maintain them? And now we can really apply the correct policies and procedures in order to keep our data as pristine as possible. So it doesn't become this all encompassing effort just to get everything in there. It's actually a very strategic effort. So we would keep things in the lake and we would tell ourselves if it doesn't have a purpose in a period of time, 2 years, we're not going to keep it. We haven't identified a purpose. There's no long term value to this data. So we're going to move it off and not be challenged by our privacy and security efforts to maintain a lot of data on people that we don't keep. That strategy has actually been very helpful to associations and is connected, I'm going to say, to the golden record ideas here. So I'm going to I'm just going to lob that in here because I know that you're interested in hearing more about that too.
I definitely want to hear about that. So I don't know, should we let Daniel start off with that? Because
Yes,
I'm like,
yes.
ooh, the golden record, because it reminds me of the golden mean, which is that place where we measure all things. So with Daniel, please, golden record. I have just been looking forward to this part of the conversation because yes, I am that kind of data nerd. So what is the golden record and how do we use it?
Sure. So the golden record is really that source of truth that you trust
Mhm.
on your data, right? So often in associations, we're dealing with membership data. Nonprofits are dealing with donor data. It's important to know when we go into a system, is that data correct or not? Is it gold that we can stake our reputations on, right? So, and how we define this is through governance. We have to identify, and every organization is going to be different. What does data quality mean to us? And what fields are most important to keep up to date, right? So for some, it might be designation. For others, it might be a totally different piece of information that we have on them, right? So it's what are we defining as uh, as as this is the gold standard for when we look at a member record that we know that this information is correct.
I love that concept. And of course, I never called it that. But when I was doing data management within associations, they're all membership groups, of course, as associations, always trying to keep that data clean. What's supposed to be in the record? What fields do we need to release? What fields do we want to add and keep up? And what are our policies for that data management? Because it's interesting thinking about it, because when you mentioned, are we doing anything with this data? Should we keep it? And a lot of the associations I worked at, if we had a member pass away, we would keep the record and we would mark them deceased. So I don't even know if you need to keep that. I mean, if they're obviously not going to renew, right? So, but in all seriousness, those are the kind of records we may want to say, well, maybe we have a policy. We keep that data for 6 months past the report date, and then we let that go. So that's a great example. So Gwen, did you want to add anything about the golden record? I just love this concept. I encourage the audience to consider it for yourselves.
So I think there's also for me a part of the golden record that I call the skinny file. And I'm going to build on your deceased record. So yes, that person is never going to renew again, but they are very important to keeping our counts accurate year over year of how many members. So they themselves may not have any operational value to us in membership, education, events, but they do have a presence to us. So do I need to keep everything about them? Probably not. Because if they participated in some education 25 years ago, for example, that education value has probably come and gone. But if I want to do some advanced statistics with the records, having good counts helps my statistical efforts to know around what is the kinds of things that help our membership grow, or the kinds of events that really challenge membership. And I'm going to add one more point to that. We are in a season of still very challenging membership activities right now, trying to sort that out in the association world. We have post-pandemic where we all kind of went online and tried to do everything online. And now it's kind of like, well, there is a purpose for people coming together and they want to come together, but we also need to be recording all of these sessions that are valuable to the people who couldn't come or show up. And that's having that as educational material or future certification pieces, or just using for news or clips becomes pretty important in the process. So I think what is happening is our member organizations are becoming smarter, more data driven with how to make those decisions, and having things in a golden record and parking things in skinny files. This is the very stuff we're going to keep about a person, their membership number. We don't have to have their name, but we do have to have the dates of membership. We're just going to keep that in order to make sure over time we know that they were a part of us, and we can see how our past is connecting to our present and our future as we make various decisions along the way. And so I think that there is a part of the golden record that is very much about active members, or even active and a little bit lapsed members. And there is a value of keeping something about in the history of who we are.
Yes. Oh, that's an excellent point. I really support that, because a lot of associations don't think about their history and what came before, and the fact that all these people have contributed to where we are now. So that's a use of data, as you just so well thought, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yes. Cecilia probably needed a third cup of coffee today. So you just really spelled that out very well, Gwen, about why we need to track this data, even if somebody's no longer a member for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons people aren't members anymore. They change careers, they retire, Maybe they move into a different part of the profession or industry, and so they join a specialty group. So tracking that, I love that term skinny file as well. I made a note about that. I love that term because it's just what we need. It's not everything. It's just what we need to keep. And I love that because, we're living in an era of great plenty, at least in the United States. So we all have lots of stuff, and that's why the storage industry is booming. So let's keep our data clean and lean. I love that. So Daniel, did you want to add anything else on Gwen's comments about the golden record and skinny files and why we need to keep just certain things?
The only thing I would add is skinny file does not necessarily just relate to those deceased members, right?
Mhm.
It can also relate to those active members. If
Mhm.
you attended an event 3 years ago and I'm still storing your dietary preferences for
Oh,
that specific event, well, the question becomes why. And as you just pointed out, the storage now is increasingly more expensive, especially with some of the larger systems that are out there. So going through defining what fields are the most important to us for what period of time and putting some definition behind that is crucial to keeping clean data.
and I think, and another great point. Thank you for that, Daniel, because another thing I've been thinking about a lot personally, because I manage my own data, we all do. Files, digital files, how long do we keep things? Financial records, we need to keep a minimum of 7 years. 10 might be better. But just thinking about that, what are we doing with all the stuff? And when I say stuff, I mean data. So, because I relate it to how we collect things over our life. Like, I've been on the planet for a while, so my house has a lot of stuff in it. Even though I keep giving stuff away, more stuff seems to appear. Because as you go through life, you pick things up, you get a book, you buy some new clothes. Or if you're like me, you have way too many shoes. Yes, I'm probably one of the only women on the planet who thinks they have too many shoes. But you have to start going through and saying, like you said, Daniel, do I really need to keep all these dietary preferences or restrictions, or do I just need the ones for this event? And I think thinking things through that way is really good because why are we keeping it? We keep a lot of stuff that we never do anything with. And I think that's a really important question for the audience to consider as they're looking at their data and managing their stuff. It's like, why are we keeping it? What are we going to do with it? Should we archive it? And if so, where are we going to archive it? And what are we going to archive? Because I have often found when I wiped out a file, I really never missed it.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and this is where data strategy comes in, is excuse me, is about um, when it's important to ask the person again about information you may hold about them in the past. So, for example, it's actually really good practice to ask at any time you're holding an event the dietary preferences. Things change in our human bodies. So, what I may know about you from 2 years at a meeting actually may become harmful or not even be relevant to you now. And so thinking about what a system is collecting and then asking ourselves, what do we really need to take back into our AMS and preserve? And what from there needs to move into our strategic hub about the person. And that what I am finding and Daniel am finding is those organizations that are undergoing those and willing to take on that level of questioning, it really is energizing to them because they're not trying to preserve everything in their garage. They're actually going,
Yeah.
I don't need this. I need it now, but I don't need this in the future, and they can let it go.
Yeah.
And we're having this conversation around. I'll be very specific around what we call personal characteristics about members, what pronouns they use, and what they used 2 years ago may not be the pronouns they're using now, and that's important for us as association folks to always show respect to our members by how they like to be referred to. And so it's not only just about the data, but it's also about who we are committed to in our values as we work with our members. And that's where I think people can really get around that their job isn't just about maintaining data for data. It's really about honoring the people who are in our association and make it go.
Yes. And well said. Again, I agree with that statement. And before we wrap up, speaking of people, you can't have an association conversation without including culture. So we talked as we were prepping for this episode about, does culture impact how we manage our data and the quality of our data? I would say a resounding yes, because if we don't have a culture of commitment to clean data and people just do whatever they want in the data, which can cause lots of chaos and confusion, because I've been there, done that. I think we need to talk about that. We need to have that culture of commitment to data. So I'm going to throw this over to Daniel. So what are some of the things you've seen or some of the advice you may have for making sure culture supports data quality?
So first of all, overall, yes, culture matters, especially around data, and it needs to start from the top. If you do not have your CEO and the entire C-suite asking questions around data, questioning the quality of the data, and making decisions based off of that data, then it's not going to drive down to the rest of the organization. The rest of the organization is going to look and say, well, yeah, you've set this North Star of data, but then you're not using it. So why is it important to me? Maybe it's not really truly a North Star, right? So it needs to be not just embraced from the top, but led from the top as well. And then it needs to trickle down. So everybody in the organization, the directors, managers, they will start asking questions because they'll see the C-suite asking those questions around data. And it goes all the way up to the board level as well. We talked a little bit about retiring and offboarding some of those processes that we might have been holding on to forever. Well, when that happens, you're going to have people that are sitting there in the room saying, well, I was around when we implemented that, and I don't think we should get rid of it. And if you can turn around and show them the data points that show that you should get rid of it, it strengthens your argument. So my advice with culture is it starts from the top and then flows down through the rest of the organization.
Yes, I agree. And that's on everything because everything is part of the culture. That's great. Thank you for that. So Gwen, what are your thoughts on organizational culture and data?
I think that many of the mid-level staff is eager to learn more, to expand their literacy skills, and they're just waiting for permission to focus on it from the executive side. So I think it's pent-up energy right now that just wants to be unleashed in a lot of areas, and people want to get better at this. They want to be able to say, hey, I'm making this decision through a data-driven lens. We can sunset these publications because they're not of use. And when that happens, it reduces the presence on, say, in a CMS, in a content management, because it's not having to be maintained there. They can offload it, and then just if people ask for it, they can ask for it, but they're not having to maintain something in an application that is actually now charging them more to store everything in there. They don't have to be a library in various applications. So I tend to think as the insights that are really being captured now in staff, if they can understand that the executive suite is open and affirming of those things, the whole organization can be strengthened in the process.
Yes. Oh, yes. Wonderful. Great insights on culture and how it does support the quality of our data because everything is data driven. And as we all know, the quality of the data is going to impact the quality of our decisions and thus our outcomes. So, this has been a great conversation about data management and data governance and why it's important and why is it we never have time to make these policies, but we always have time to fix it later. So, don't fix it later. Build that into the culture now. Great conversation. Thank you both again. You've both been on before, so you know I like to ask my guests what's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more. So we're going to start the wrap up with Daniel.
Uh, so I think the one thing I want the audience to take away today is the importance of both operational and strategic data, and that this initiative really has to be led from the top. You need the C-suite asking about that strategic data, and at the same time, you need those managers of the organization using operational data to make decisions in their role. So data is important throughout the entire organization, and it starts from the top.
And how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more?
Absolutely. So you can go to strategico-consultants.com, or you can contact me directly at daniel@strategico-consultants.com.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Another great episode, and you shared so much good content, and as has Gwen. So Gwen, what is your closing thought? What should the audience take away today, and how can they get in touch with you?
Stay curious about how data moves in your systems and what you want and need to know. So stay curious and know that your data matters and can matter and make decisions easier and more worthwhile. So stay curious and your data matters. Do that. And I would say I'm going to defer, since, as you know, I'm a working faculty member, to really lean on my partner, Daniel Elacqua, in this at Strategico Consultants. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Daniel is a terrific partner and answers a lot of the first questions. And then anytime that the strategist needs to be involved, he reaches out, and then I can provide very timely support in that way.
Okay.
So reach out to Strategico, reach out to Daniel. That's the best way to get to me.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you. And yes, contact Strategico, and then you can reach both Daniel and Gwen. So I want to thank you both for coming back. Always enjoy our conversations, and I always get a new insight. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting conversation like this one. If you have not yet followed us or subscribed, please take a moment and do that. We're well past episode 300, and there's still so much to talk about as we go along. So please take a moment and do that. If you'd like to find this episode featuring Daniel and Gwen, go to our website, roguetulips.com, and visit our podcast page. And then you can find this episode and share it with your friends and colleagues, and have a follow-up conversation with your friends about this interesting topic. You can also see our podcast library and see what else we've been talking about lately. So lots of good stuff there. If you'd like to learn more about our education program, please visit our education page. We are offering our ethics course throughout the year, which qualifies for renewal or application for several certifications. So check that out. You might want to check out our adaptive leadership course as well. And we are closed for registration for the spring session, but keep an eye out for information about our fall education courses that we'll be offering for CAE Prep. If you'd like to know what I am thinking about this week, and frankly, most of the time I don't know what I'm going to say, visit the blog page and see what's been on my mind. You can also sign up for our newsletter to get that as well. And in closing, if you'd like to know what sort of consulting work we do here at Rogue Tulips, visit our services page, and then let's have a conversation. So that's it for this week. Thanks for listening to Radio Free 501c. And on behalf of Daniel, Gwen, and myself, we'll see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together.